for another episode of Popcorn and Parachute Pants, a podcast where we discuss the very best of movies of the 1980s. And now, here are your hosts, Mr. Fingers and Nick Rosario.
Well, hello everyone. Yes, that is right. The dynamic duo is back, baby, for another episode here of Popcorn and Parachute Pants. You know us, you love us, at least I believe you love us. We're back to give you another entry into 80s movies. Of course, that is what this podcast is about. Anthony and I are covering movies exclusively from the 1980s, which is an era that both of us gloriously grew up in. And when I say grow up, trust me when I tell you, because I know for me, I went from 7 to 17 in the 80s. So those were totally my formative years. So yes, I love everything 80s, and that's why we started this, because I know Handy, being a couple years older than me, so you were what, 9 to... Nah, 10. Come on, brother. You were 10, so you started the decade at 10? Oh yeah, you were born in 70, so you went from 10 to 20 in this era, my friend. So yeah, yes, big decade for you, big decade for me. That's why we're here. So I hope you're all doing well. We hope you're all doing well. So Anthony, why don't you go ahead and tell them what we got today for them? What do we got today?
Today's movie, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is another one that talks about the great American pastime. And if you guys haven't figured out, we've been paying tribute to the great American pastime, Major League Baseball, because it is that time of year. Spring training starts soon, and we picked another banger for you from the 80s, because there were a lot of great baseball movies in the 80s. This one a little more comedic, on the comedic side. We are talking about Major League.
Yeah, baby, Major League. A 1989 release with a running time of 1 hour and 46 minutes. Of course, this movie also spawned a couple sequels, but those were in the 90s, so we ain't going to talk about those. We're here today to talk about just Major League itself. Yeah, we're going to do the sequels.
One is good.
Yeah, well, and it is that trouble sometimes with sequels. They're just not as good as the original. So, but luckily, this was at the end of the 80s. You know, again, decade was ending, but they still gave us one more good baseball film for us to enjoy. And so Anthony and I are here today to talk to you about that. So, with that being said, well, here's what, Anthony, let's start with this, because I think this is, because for some of the people in this movie, you know, some of the careers were just getting started. A couple of, grizzled veterans in this movie. But nonetheless, the cast that they assembled alone for this film, I think, is worth noting. And of course, yeah, definitely an all-star cast. So let's just start at the top. Obviously, you had your boy Charlie Sheen playing Rick Wild Thing Vaughn, right? You know,
and Ricky. He was somewhat already established as part of wasn't he part of the Brat Pack?
Well, I think, I don't know if he was like an extension of by association
of his brother.
Right, because Emilio obviously was definitely a part of it. But see, Charlie didn't really do the Brat Pack films in essence. Like, he did like a movie called The Wraith. He was at that small part of Ferris Bueller. Like, Charlie was kind of on his own thing, I think, but because, like I said, he's around the same age as a lot of those people, he might have been associated with him. But then you had, of course, Tom Berenger as the veteran catcher, Jake Taylor. Berenger at that point did, again, he did a Western. What was the Western he did with Kevin Costner in them? I always forget the name. Silverado, wasn't it Silverado he was in?
I don't know it. I'm on it. I'm looking it up right now.
No, but then he did a movie called Someone to Watch Over Me with Mimi Rogers. So, he had a little bit of a name there, Mr. Tom Berenger in the 80s. Then, of course, you had Mr.
years old, by the way. Who knew?
Oh, he's 74 now?
Yeah, I thought he was pretty much immortal.
No, you're right. Everybody, who didn't like Tom Berenger, right? But then, of course, you had Corbin Burnson, right? Our boy Corbin. Man. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But
who already was established had established himself in the earlier part of the 80s as part of the ensemble cast of NBC long-running Thursday night drama L.A. Law.
I'm taking it you were a fan, Anthony, with that introduction. Did you enjoy the L.A. Law? Because I know I watched. Yeah,
I never missed the episode. How could you listen? L.A. Law. Well, let's also be real about something. L.A. Law was part of a very epic Thursday night lineup on the Peacock network, because you had there was a certain show about a certain family with an obstetrician dad and an attorney mom. and their
Yeah.
5 children who lived in a brownstone in New York, and the Cosby Show, and then you had a different world to follow that,
That's right.
and
Yeah,
then
different world there.
yeah, and then behind that, I think I can't remember if L.A. Law came on at 9 or 10, but I
I
mean,
thought it
you
was the
had a
last show on that block. I think they were on at
yeah,
9 to 10. Yeah.
yeah, but it was a hell of a lead in. You
Yeah.
if you had a show that was on Thursday night while the Cosby Show was on, you did not miss.
It did well. Yes, it did. Yeah, every show that followed Cosby did absolutely well during that time.
Little more 80s love for you, not cinematic, but still,
Yeah,
TV.
we love everything 80s. Like I said, we
Bruh.
could be here all day. As a matter of fact, Anthony and I were just talking before we came out. Like, we need to stop talking and just start recording, because otherwise we'll be here at 6 o'clock at night still talking about whatever. Because that's just the way it goes when him and I get together and chat. So
Yeah.
we're gonna try to get through this, folks. We got a lot to say about this movie. So again, bear with us. We're gonna have some fun with this one because it is a
We gonna have
comedic film.
big fun.
It's big fun, right? And of course, James Gammons. Some of you may not know the name per se, but I know you. He's one of those guys where you look and you go, "Oh, I've seen that guy. He was in that film," or "I've seen that guy. He was in that one." He played Coach Lou Brown in this particular instance. Absolutely hilarious. And of course, very early role for a gentleman that you all know very well, Mr. Wesley Snipes, plays Willie Mays Hayes. And of course, like I said, always been on black. But again, this was right before all the big stuff hit for Wesley. At this point, he had done the Michael Jackson Bad video with he was the gangster in the subway, and he did a movie called Wildcats with Goldie Hawn the year before that. So he hadn't done too much. So this was a big thing for Wesley, big co-starring role for him. Of course, the late great Margaret Whitten. Anthony had just actually told me before we went on that she actually passed a few years back. But of course, she played the owner, Rachel Phelps. And again, she's an integral part that gets this movie going. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Early role for the lovely
Miss Renee Russo.
No, I'm with you, Renee Russo.
Listen, for those of you that are watching this that are Gen Z or millennial, Renee Russo was who's the hot 30-something woman of the moment now?
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence? I don't know. I mean, you find her attractive? I don't know. Yeah.
That's a good one to throw out there. But she was one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood at that point.
I think so.
Yeah,
I agree.
100%.
I agree.
And of course, I have to steal the mic from you on this one.
Oh, go ahead, man.
Many of you may know this guy from a chain of insurance commercials. And we're not talking about Jake from State Farm, nor are we talking Mayhem, nor are we talking the geeky guy in the Progressive commercials. We're talking about That's Allstate, Stan. Are you in good hands? And then prior to the Allstate commercials, you may even know him from a 2000 drama series with Kiefer Sutherland as President Palmer. We're talking about that indistinguishable, that you can't mistake that voice, though, no matter what he's in. Dennis Haysbert as Pedro Serrano, who was a voodoo worshiping superstitious player who just his big thing was if he could make contact with the ball, it was out of the park. But if you threw him a breaker, you threw him a breaking ball, he looked like me. He
looked like me. He swung like I did, right? I couldn't hit water if I fell out of a boat. No, I'm just kidding.
What?
Anyway, no, I hear you. And of course,
you can see me playing softball. Sometimes I have grown woefully. I've grown woefully unathletic in my middle age, man. It's bad. It's sad.
I mean, maybe you're not as spry as you once were, Handy, but I'm sure it's not that bad. But it's okay. Rounding out the cast real quickly, of course, Chelsea Ross, who again, he's one of those guys you've seen around, may not know the name, but he did a ton of work. He's always had small parts in a ton of movies. He played veteran pitcher Eddie Harris, which we'll get into that too, because of all the special things he did to get the ball over the plate. Of course, how can we mention this movie without mentioning Bob Uecker, Mr. Baseball, playing the announcer. That's right, Mr. Light Beer commercial for all of you older folks like us. If you didn't enjoy those light beer commercials from the late 70s, early 80s with the less filling, tastes great and all that, you got to go back and watch those because they're phenomenal. Of course, he plays Harry Doyle, who is the play-by-play announcer for the
play-by-play announcer.
Yeah, exactly, for the Cleveland Indians. The Uke. It doesn't again for some of you, again, folks of our age, you remember Mr. Belvedere? He was the father on that.
Oh
I
man,
believe
I
his name was
forgot about that. I forgot
right. You
about
forgot about
TV
Mr. Belvedere.
series.
All right, I forget Mr. Belvedere. That was my Lynn
He,
Belvedere.
he got the TV series off the popularity of the Miller Lite commercials.
Right. And then he started putting him in movies. And again, Major League was probably one of his first ones, if not the first movie that Mr. Euchre appears in. So, yeah, that rounds out the cast. So you can see this is a great, very talented cast. This is a big cast in the sense of, everybody. And I think that's one of the things about this movie, Anthony, just to get it going. Everybody has like their moments in this film. Again, the movie's only an hour and 46 minutes. So you would think with, 10 kind of major characters, somebody's going to get cut out or somebody that it really isn't like that. Everybody has their little time to shine in this film. Yep. And I think that's what kind of makes it so great is you have all these different moments with all the major characters that you just, and I mean, it's definitely an ensemble movie. Like I said, in the hour and 46 minutes, they get through everything. So
yeah, you know what? Now that you mention it, there really aren't, there's no loose ends to tie up. Everything is tied together.
Yeah. Absolutely, and as I said, and I think that's why if you watched our last episode, we did Bull Durham, which goes for another baseball movie. This is number 2 for me. I kind of put them 1 and 2. They're kind of even. Like Bull Durham I consider it my favorite, but literally Major League is right next to it for me. Like these are to me my 2 favorite baseball movies of all time, no exception. Argue with me if you like, but I will never back down. But let's get into it. So to start real quickly, let's get into what happens is Margaret Whitten, who plays, again, this is Rachel Phelps, the owner, inherits the team, and she wants to move the team to Miami. But in order to do that, the attendance has to drop so low that the city of Cleveland will break the contract. Right, like you're talking like 2 people in the stadium. That the attendance has to, how low can you go? So the attendance has to drop so badly that Cleveland will let her out of the lease to move the team to Miami. So her thought is to fire all of their big name, blah, blah, whatever players, get rid of and pick a bunch of what she considers losers and invite them to spring training. She even fires the manager. So like everybody's gone. So they're starting entirely over because she wants this team to tank so that she can move the team to Miami and make her money. Mm-hmm. So it starts out, of course, we get, into the first few scenes. She's talking to Charlie, who was one of the other management guys on the team. He tells him, here's a list of players I want you to get. And he goes through, he's like, you want this guy? Like, he goes, this guy is dead. She's like, well, then cross him off the list. So you have the whole, yeah, exactly. So the beginning of the movie, you just know it's set up for, comedic. So then Charlie starts calling around, inviting people to Indians camp. And of course, this brings up, you start, this is kind of where you get introduced to the characters. You see, they call Tom Berenger, who's apparently in a Mexican hotel hungover because he answers the phone with 2 girls in his bed and a sombrero on his head. You got Charlie Sheen is in prison answering the phone because, you'll later find out that he played in the California penal system when they ask him what league he played in. He
may have fractured an occasional law too in the past.
Right, exactly. So, so you see a couple of the early phone calls. And of course, like I said, one of the big scenes in the beginning is when everybody arrived. And of course, let's not forget the one of my favorites. They need a new manager, so they call this guy Lou Brown, who apparently was a minor league manager, but also ran a tire shop. So they call. Yep. Charlie calls Lou, and Lou answers the phone and goes, hello, whatever tire shop. And he's like, hey Lou, it's Charlie. How'd you like to coach the Cleveland Indians this year? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I got a guy on the phone about some white walls, Charlie. I'll call you later. So they just go, okay. So he just hangs up the phone. So, so again, that's kind of how it begins. Like I said, you get to the spring training part. Anthony, I'll kick it back over to you, my friend. This movie's getting started. What do we got at spring training there?
What do we got in spring training? Well, I'm going to have to, in order to give you my favorite part of spring training, I'm just going to go ahead and give you my favorite scene.
Absolutely. Go ahead, man. Line. Absolutely.
I'll just go ahead and put the graphic up there now.
Right.
Wesley Snipes, not on the list, knows that the Indians are looking for players, brings a cot. He's all set up. They take his cot, they take it outside the stadium.
Yeah.
He wakes up the next day to the sound of tryouts going on, and he goes, shit, I've been cut already. These guys are running wind sprints. He
Yeah,
comes running into camp in his PJs and bare
yeah,
feet,
yeah.
and Usain Bolt smokes the two guys that are running, clocks him. The guy goes, "Get him in a uniform."
Yeah,
I love that.
exactly.
I love that.
Yeah,
But
no,
his big thing is he is fast, and I mean lightning fast, but he can't hit to save his life.
yes.
It's like
Which,
it's like it's like it's like it's like it's like a what do you call it? A catch 22.
yeah,
If he can make contact with the ball, if he can make contact with the ball, he's the kind of guy that'll turn a single into a double or maybe even a triple.
yeah.
And he definitely could Ricky Henderson his way around the bases, but he cannot make contact with the ball to save his life. You see him in spring training, and he's just hitting pop-ups up into the top of the net. He's I don't know why that scene just make me crack up every time I see it.
Well, no, and see, that's what leads to one of my favorite lines during that time because, like you said, he can't hit for anything. So Lou Brown tells him, "You may run like Hayes, but you hit like shit." So yeah, and he tells him, "For every time you hit a pop fly, you owe me 5 push-ups because he keeps hitting the ball in the air. He's not, he's just high flying out to everybody." So he's like, "You've got speed. You got to run on the ground. Hit the ball on the ground, run it out." So every time he hits a pop fly, you see him get down and do 5 push-ups. So that's one of the funniest things too. Like this is what part of the whole spring training thing. Sorry, Anthony, go ahead. I could. Yeah, I mean,
No, you're
because
good.
the spring training scene alone, like that first maybe whatever 15 minutes that it is, had so much good stuff in it as well. Because you see, like Charlie Sheen comes out and he's got no hat on, his sleeves are cut off, and the coach tells him, "We wear caps and sleeves in this league." Yeah, exactly. So he's like, "All right, let's see what you got." So he's got a wooden batter at there to give him an idea of where the batter is, and he breaks the head off of the damn thing because he throws a fastball like 95 and just takes the head off of the wooden batter there. And it's funny because you see Charlie Sheen just as a pitcher, and I guess Charlie played some baseball when he was younger, so it wasn't like he was totally out of catch here. But yeah, and the another one of the like scenes in the terms of
Good velocity. Sounded like it.
yeah, sounded like it, right, exactly. He's like, "Hey Jake, how are the knees holding up?" Because obviously Jake is a veteran catcher. He's had bad knees. He's like, "Oh, good." He goes, "All right, give me a throw to second." And literally, he like 2 hops it into the guy at second base. He's like, "Oh crap!" He's like, "Come on, Jake, don't lie to me. I need a guy to lead this team." So you have all the genesis of like what's going to happen. And of course, Roger Dorn is just a pain in the butt third baseman who doesn't want to do anything because he's like he doesn't have to do calisthenics. He doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to field ground balls. Like
he's a prima donna. He's pretty much like the character in LA Law. He's a prima donna pretty boy. So,
which again, it's we're gonna say this a lot. I think Anthony may just have to leave the favorite scenes or lines thing up there for most of this podcast because it led to another one of my favorite moments where Dorn is trying to catch fly balls and he just swipes at it and he goes, "Hey Dorn, enough of this Olay bullshit. Get in front of the ball." So because like the manager every time just had something to say to everyone about everything. So again, if you've seen the movie, like James Gambit to me was the star of. I mean, not the star of the film, but like he took the movie away. Anytime he spoke, you just sit there and cracked up. At least I did, and I just think
he was pretty much the guy that he was the guy that drove the ship. Like you had all your other personalities in the movie, but he was the guy that drove the ship, and he would, if it was almost like another of my favorite 80s movies that I think we talked about, or if we haven't, we need to. Full Metal Jacket. It's like had this cast of characters with Anthony Bourdain and Vincent D'Onofrio and all these guys that were in in boot camp. And they all had their different personalities, but your personality didn't come out. We didn't get introduced to you until Drill Instructor Hartman got to this side.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one we need to put on the list, Anthony, because Full Metal Jacket is a classic. Stanley Kubrick, just some of his best work with that one. So now again, spring training, guys are making the team because again, these are all guys who she wants, she put these guys here on purpose. She didn't want them to win, so she thought, I'm going to get this group of losers. So there is one scene though where they play a trick on Charlie Sheen, or at least Dorn does, which is what starts the antagonistic relationship between Dorn and Vaughn. Is that the way you are cut in spring training is they put a red card in your locker. So at the end of the day, when you're done with practice, if there's a red card or red tag in your locker, that means you've been cut. So as they go into on the last day of spring training, Vaughn goes to open his locker and he sees the red card there and feels, thinks he's been cut. So he storms into Blue Brown's office and starts, swearing like, "You're gonna regret the day you cut me," blah 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 blah. And he's like, "Somebody's playing a trick on you, son. I didn't cut you." So right away he knows it's Dorn, and as soon as he comes out of the locker room, we got a big fight, blah 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 blah. He's like, "Hey, it was just a joke," the whole thing. So that kind of sets up that relationship, because we'll get more into that later as to what happens with those two later. But of course, like I said, everybody pretty much makes the team that they introduce you to. So you've got Serrano, you got Taylor makes the team, Vaughn makes the team, Dorn makes the team, Willie Mays Hayes, even though he can't hit, he makes the team. So you got the team is set up. Ed Harris, the old veteran Ed Harris, is the pitcher. So you got everybody set up here to get it started. So then we kind of get into the season, and you kind of get a little bit more into the film, but introduced during this time, because again we talked about her a little bit earlier, but Renee Russo, who plays Lynn Wells, is actually the ex-wife or girl. I forget if it was wife or girlfriend. I do apologize for that.
I think it was ex-girlfriend.
Ex-girlfriend. Because he's back in Cleveland, that's where Lynn Wells lives. So we also get introduced to her during this first 20 minutes of the film, because Jake realizes he's going back to Cleveland. He's going to try to reunite with Lynn. So that is also introduced during this first kind of act of the movie. So now you've got all the participants. You've got all, you have all the information you need. The Indians are going to start the season. You got the subplot of Jake trying to get Lynn Wells back. You got the antagonistic relationship between Vaughn and Dorn. And then Rachel Phelps just the whole time waiting for this team to
run a team in the ground.
Right. So just trying to run this team ragged so that they won't win and she can move the team to Miami. So as we get into the second part, obviously it's more of just, there's a lot of baseball scenes. They show them playing different teams. And one of my, again, favorite, you talk about funny moments, maybe favorite scene, favorite line, Willie Mays Hayes gets a walk. So he's on first base. And there's a first baseman for the Yankees named Clu Haywood, which we'll get into him later because Bob Uecker has some great lines about him. And Haywood's talking to him because he knows he's a rookie. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Rookie's like, "Oh," he's like, I'm about to be in baseball immortality." He's like, "Well, where do you think you're going?" He's like, "About 90 feet. So he keeps talking to him. Right? He's trying to, he knows it. So then he goes, "Hey, man, your shoe's untied." So Wesley Snipes looks down, and sure enough, the pitcher throws the ball to first, and they pick Wesley Snipes off first base. So it just shows you in the beginning how inept some of these, these guys are. They don't get what's going on. And there's another funny one with Wesley for me that I think is hilarious. He tries to turn a single into a double, and the ball gets to the second baseman so fast that Wesley tries to slide and he misses the base, slides too early, and you just see the guy going like this, going, come on, so he can tag him out. So just there's some early stuff there with Wesley that's pretty funny.
Just looking at him.
He's like, come on, Randy, come on, you're almost there, right? Exactly. So that kind of stuff. So you think that the Indians are fumbling in the beginning because again you got a lot of people, and the old catcher, all these guys who haven't played really before in the professionals. So there's a lot of mishaps, missteps in the beginning, which again, there's a lot of stuff going on there. But again, the movie does progress in a way where so now we're getting kind of into the middle, Anthony. We're basically, and this is the revelation. So I'll let you, you take this part where the coach lets them know what is actually happening with this team and why this team was put together.
Well, the thing about that is, for all of their ineptitude, somehow or another, they start winning.
Yep.
They just, for all of this, for Pedro not being able to hit a breaking ball and all of the rituals at his locker and Vaughn, who we discover later on, he's having trouble controlling the fastball. When we discover that he's got a problem with his eyesight.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so then they make corrections there, and then Willie Mays Hayes starts figuring out ways to get on base and make use of his speed, and they start winning. Well, all of a sudden, They start winning, and Phelps is just steady trying to sandbag the team, and they find out what's going on, and they were like, "Oh no, now we got to win." Wait a minute now. Help me out here.
Oh yeah,
the cardboard cutout. And
yeah, that's the best. That's the best.
The cardboard cutout. So what they do is they bring in this cardboard cutout of Rachel Phelps because she used to be a Vegas showgirl,
right?
And she wasn't the original owner of the team. Her husband was. He dies and leaves.
He died. Right.
And so they find out she used to be a showgirl. So for every game that they win to get towards the magic number, is it to get to the playoffs?
Yeah, it's going to take this many wins to win this division or the pennant, this division. So every time we win,
we're going to peel off a piece of clothing.
Yeah.
And oh boy, you want to talk about? Hey, look, you want to talk about? You can. One thing remains true about professional athletes: you can motivate them with money, you can motivate them with sponsorships, you can motivate them with houses and cars and jewelry and all the free food they can eat, the finest restaurants anywhere. Nothing motivates a locker greater than the prospect of, and it's going to sound sexist, but still true in 2024. You get to see somebody with no clothes on or little to no clothes on. Oh man, they went on a rampage.
Yeah, I mean it's true because he tells him he's like, hey, she put this team together because she wants to relocate the team to Miami. And all of you guys, he's telling him, he's like, and after the season, you'll all get cut or get your outright release. And then, and then she'll get a hold, move the team to Miami, get a whole new team. And then Dorn goes, even me? And he's like, yes, even you, Dorn. So you get this whole, so then they go, all right, so what are we going to do here? And of course, Jake steps up, the grizzled leader, and tells him, win the whole fucking thing. And that's exactly what, from that moment on, you see the new Cleveland Indians, and they're motivated, and they just start, like you said, they start to win. Again, Serrano still can't hit a curveball, which leads to one of my favorite moments in the locker room between him and Eddie Harris, because, as we all know, he's got his little buddy Jobu that he prays to, gives thanks to, whatever, that sits in his locker. You just see little Jobu sitting there. And he pours him a little rum.
He's got the incense, and he's got the thing he's rubbing on the bed, and yama 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 yama.
yeah, exactly.
Right? And it's crazy.
It's fun. No, it is great. He just sits there, and so this leads to another funny moment where Ed Harris, who's a devout Christian and believes in Jesus, he's like, well, why don't you just pray to Jesus? And Serrano's like, oh, I like Jesus. He's very good. But he don't help me hit a curveball. And Dorn shoots back with, oh, well, you're saying Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball? And the manager's like, come on, Dorn, don't start a holy war. So you got the whole dynamic in the locker room too just cracks me up. Whenever they show locker room scenes, it's just the whole thing just absolutely it's hilarious.
But it was this is like the perfect when I call an example of a perfect baseball film is that you get introduced to all of it. You get introduced to all of the major players. You get the story. You get the story. There's no trying to figure out what's going on. It's not a thriller whodunit. You get the plot up front. You meet the major players up front. You bring all the major players together. Even with the scene of getting off the bus and showing up for training camp and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Develops. You got the locker room scene because most teams bond in the a lot of the bonding, just as much bonding is done for any of you that have never played a sport before. Just as much bonding done in the locker room as there is on the practice field and on the playing field.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, sometimes that's where a lot of the bonding is done. I mean, I've had a shoving match or two in the locker room after a bad game.
Oh, sure.
You know what I'm saying? So this is one of those. Even though it was meant to be like a comedy parody, it was perfectly put together.
Yeah.
I don't think they could have put it together any more perfectly.
Which the funny part about the scene that happens a little bit later is, Harris makes a comment about, I wouldn't leave that rum around with all the jokers in this locker room. And Serrano shoots back at him. It is very bad to drink Jobu's rum. So one day, Eddie Harris walks into the locker room, sees that Jobu's rum is out, and decides to take a sip. So he's like, "Hey, bartender, Joe Boone needs a refill." And then he goes out to the field. And as he's going out to the field, the guy in the batting box swings and the bat goes and it hits Harris in the back of the head and he falls out. So you just see him sitting there on the bench with a towel on the back of his head. And of course, that's because he drank Joe Boone's rum. As Serrano told him, it is very bad to drink Joe Boone's
It's
rum.
very bad to drink Joe Bull's rum.
There you go. See, Anthony can do that better because he's got that deeper, like Dennis Haysbert voice that you just. I mean, I can go a little deep, but Handy's got that real that real bass, like that Barry White type
Man,
bass in your voice.
And he's made a living off that voice, man.
Yeah,
later
100%.
on, his famous line for 7 years for 3 seasons was "Find Jack Bauer." Like that was.
yeah, exactly. But again, everybody loved him. Guy's got one of the greatest voices ever. Can't beat that. So again, as we're moving along in the film, again, they start winning. Things are starting to go well. They always intercut little scenes of like Rachel Phelps being disgusted by stuff and like, this team is actually winning. They actually might do this, And so so it's funny because they always intercut.
Every game they win, they peel off another piece of her clothes.
Right.
The guys go
You
crazy.
see the section, right? You see the section start coming off during the film, like the whole. So, but let's just jump back for a minute. Because again, as I told you, one of the setups in the beginning is obviously Berenger trying to get his girlfriend back. And so one of the things he does is he finds out that she works at a library. So he goes there one day to try to tell her that, hey, I'm back. Let's do this, yada, yada, yada. And then she mentions to him that she's engaged. And this sets up probably one of my, not, favorite. Again, I say that a lot, but I mean, it's just a funny moment where he finds out her address and just shows up unannounced one day, and she's having a dinner party with her fiance and a bunch of their friends, and he just shows up out of nowhere and tries to be charming. He's talking to her, he's like, I play for the Indians, blah, 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 blah. And the fiance comes to the door, or takes him to the door as he's leaving. He's like, no, I better go, blah, blah. And he's like, stay away from her. And Tom Berenger shakes his hand and he goes, suck my dick. And he just walks out casually. Like, so again, you get the whole thing where he's not giving up. He's going to go after his ex-girlfriend. She is engaged to this dude. And so just another, fun, again, the side note with everybody having their little moments. Tom Berenger trying to win his girlfriend back during all of this winning that they're doing. And one of the other things that comes out of this, of course, is that Charlie Sheen, he said his vision gets corrected with the glasses, even though he doesn't want to wear them. So he gets a pair he wants with a little skull and crossbones right in the middle here of his black rimmed glasses. And so he starts to become, just the lights out closer. He becomes the Wild Thing, as he is dubbed by the Indian Nation. Cleveland Nation.
The four men Indian Nation that was out in the
Bleacher. Yeah, exactly. Which that's funny too. Like that's hilarious too. That you got the guys dressed up and they're all banging and stuff. But yeah, and so he becomes the Wild Thing, which becomes his nickname. He's Rick Wild Thing Vaughn. So a lot of things happen here. Burnson actually starts to play okay. He stops with the Olay stuff and is actually getting in front of the ball and trying to do all that stuff. So, I mean, again, the movie's going along. It's kind of moving. And we're getting to kind of the I'd probably say last third of the movie in essence, where this is where now everything like kind of comes together. They've officially, they're officially clinched. He peels off the last section. They all cheer. And they're getting ready to, the Yankees were their big opponent. So they're getting ready to go to the playoffs, and play the Yankees again. With the first baseman who is the guy who always gets them, which is Clu Hayward. So go ahead, Handy, if you want to get us started with the last third of the movie here.
Oh well, basically, Willie Mays Hayes. It's 2 outs. He gets a single, and he manages to steal second base. And Taylor's up to bat now. Taylor steps up to the plate, and this is where the music is climaxing and everything. And he points. He gives him the Babe Ruth. He's like, it's going out that way. And of course, he's known. He's had his heyday, but he's got the bad knees and all that stuff. but he's had his heyday, and they're like, okay, we go respect that. We go put some respect on that. So the outfielders start backing out, and the pitch comes in, and boop, he bunts. Bam, Hayes comes around third, jukes the tag. Bam, game over. Indians win the division. Hey! That's about it. I'm sorry, I'm not as vivid with you as the descriptions, but it's just
that's all right.
like the Indians win the division. They are celebrating, and Rachel Phelps, they're singing. I think they're singing "Wild Thing" in the stands, and she's saying the song. It's all this. Yeah.
He goes, yeah. He's like, yeah.
I was reeled it in because I was getting ready to do that thing I do on the other show where I just go on a comedic.
That's okay. Nah, that's why we're here. Yeah. You good? Okay, no, you good, right? You sure you good? All right, just make sure, because I never want to stifle you, my brother. Like if I'm good with it. Like that's why we're here.
Sometimes you have to learn to. Sometimes you have to learn to take the pat the beast on the head and go, not now. I'll give you a snack later.
I'll give you a snack. Yeah, here's a Scooby snack. Want a treat? No,
yeah. I tell you what, man, having a dog in the house is definitely taught me that. It's like, hey, calm down.
Right, calm down.
All right, later. Like right now, she's booping her nose on the door, she's like,
Daddy's trying to get in.
Like, yeah, so I'd have to take her for a ride later. But I digress. So,
no, it's all right. Hey, dogs are important. But yeah, so again, a lot of you, who are watching this probably have seen this movie or have heard of it, so you know what happens. Again, the Indians do win the pennant, as it were. They beat the Yankees. It's the whole thing, So Rachel Phelps obviously gets upset because they won. She can't move the team to Miami now because the team is good. These no names came out of nowhere to bring glory back to Cleveland.
How did they win? I set them up to fail.
Exactly. And that brings up a kind of an interesting thing because just on kind of like a notes thing, like I found this very interesting doing some research with the film, Handy. They actually filmed a different ending with her initially.
They did.
For the test audiences because it was basically a thing where she kind of came around to being happy that the team was winning. And they did a thing where she gives a speech in the locker room like, oh, I'm so proud of you guys. I knew you could do it the whole time. She gives one of those speeches. And test audiences hated it because they all wanted to hate her character. Like they didn't want to like Rachel Phelps. So they're like, no, that doesn't work. So they literally went back and reshot some scenes for the ending, which is where the iconic line comes in for her when the Wild Thing music is playing when he comes out in that last game. She says, I hate this fucking song. Because
you know what? I'm not to cut you off. I need to find out how to be part of these test audiences because I keep hearing about how they have these test showings.
Yeah, right.
Movies and people they tested it on audiences and audiences didn't like it. I need to. Because movies is $178 a pop. I'd be nice if somebody would just be like, "Hey, here's some free tickets. Come check the movie out. We just want your opinion." You know what I mean?
Maybe we have to go to California.
Does it come with free popcorn? I'm all in.
Oh man, if you get free popcorn, I'll do anything. But yeah, that's all I'm saying. But I wonder if it's like if they do this in California, or do they pick a state and go here? Because my thing would be just to get off, not to get off too topic, but like if you're going to screen a movie, I know that people in California are going to be like, oh, this is great. They kiss your butt, whatever. I want to go to like Wyoming and just show some regular folks this film and go, what do you think of this? And get their honest opinion of what the movie is. You know what I mean?
Or better yet, since the movie was about the Indians, screen it in Cleveland.
And see what they think about, right, exactly. So, yeah, stuff like that. Because, you always wonder, like you said, you do wonder, like, where are these test audiences and how do you get in on that? Because I would love to see a movie before it actually comes out and give my, opinion on what the movie, maybe change this or change that. But, again, this probably leads us into what Anthony and I like to get into, where we talk about facts from the movie or interesting side notes, things of that nature.
You got most of the facts on this one. You rattled off about 100 of them while we were in the green room before we.
Sorry. This will be one of my favorite films. Yes, I probably did a little bit more than I probably should have, but whatever. It's just me. I don't want to. I try to keep it. Well, go ahead, Andy.
I got one.
No, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
I was just scrolling to see because I did pull up real quick. I got the piano fingers. Did you know that in 2015 there's a company that called themselves the Jobu Lifestyle?
Okay.
That they started producing figurines of Jobu. And it's in the package. The packaging is a whole homage
Yeah.
to Serrano's locker.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
I had heard about that. And that leads into what I'm about to tell you as one of the facts I found out. As we all know, or as for you baseball fans know, in 2016, the Indians made the World Series and they played the Chicago Cubs. Now, you know that the Chicago Cubs won their first World Series by beating Cleveland in the 7 games. And of course, everybody, if you're in Chicago, everybody has the T-shirt. The greatest baseball game ever played was on a Wednesday night in Cleveland, whatever day it was, Tuesday, Wednesday, I forget. But what they did in 2016 was the Indians actually had an empty locker and they put a Jobu shrine in it for the playoffs. So they had their own little, they had the Jobu shrine in the empty locker, and I guess they would, give it rum every day, whatever they did for the good luck and they ended up making the World Series. So I just found that kind of funny
Nice.
that they actually had their own little Jobu shrine during the 2016 playoff run. So that's pretty funny. If you ask, I think that's hilarious.
Here's another one here. In the World Baseball Classic 2017 World Baseball Classic,
Yeah.
they started making the Team Israel had a mascot called the Mensch on the Bench.
Mensch on a bench. Okay, yeah, Mensch on a bench.
And they made and the comparison was made to Jobu. The quote was, quote, "He brings a lot to the table. Every team needs their Jobu. He was ours. He had his own locker, and we even gave him offerings. Manischewitz, Gelt, and gefilte fish."
Oh wow, that is hilarious. That is hilarious.
Wow, that's
but
crazy.
Yeah, a lot of people.
I can't say gefilte fish without hearing
you look like Chris Tucker in Rush Hour 2, right? Gefilte fish.
What is it? Filter fish.
Yeah, gefilte fish.
You use up all our film.
yeah, use it up. Yeah, use it up all our film. That is hilarious. But yeah, and that's a lot of the. We were talking about earlier about how there's just so many characters and so many great. We've gone over some of the favorite lines we have, but Bob Uecker, who obviously plays Harry Doyle, as we mentioned, his lines were improvised. They gave him the scenario. Yeah, they gave him the scenario, and they go, "Okay, Bob, do your thing. You're the baseball guy, so here's the scenario, and go." And I'm telling you, he had some of the greatest. Just one of my favorites was during one of the games they're playing the Yankees, and that guy we talk about, Clu Hayward, comes up, and he goes, "Yeah, this guy leads the league in most offensive categories, including nose hair." So it's just one of those little things that he dropped on his own. Or like the one time the pitcher came in, the reliever came in for New York. His name was the Duke, and Uecker's talking about, "Hey, here comes the Duke now," and this guy's so crazy that he once tried to throw at his son during a father-son game. So just everything that Bob said, he just would come up with on his own. The just a bit outside when Vaughn throws a pitch that literally gets all the way away from the catcher. So I think it's funny that they let you.
My favorite is still the one where he goes, "Well, I can't figure out why these guys aren't taking a chance on these pitches when they're so close. Why they're not swinging at them, and they're just obviously like miles away from home plate."
But that was the genius of Uke, and I think that's one of the things that's underappreciated maybe in this film. Is just the Harry Doyle little scenes where he's just giving us his thing because it's all him. Like that's literally Bob Uecker. That's how, because a lot of people don't maybe not know that he actually is the play-by-play guy, or was. I don't know. I don't know if he's retired or not. I'd have to look that up. But he was a play-by-play guy for Milwaukee for years.
Mm-hmm.
So he literally, because again, this movie, that's one of the facts I have, was actually filmed in Milwaukee. It was at the old county stadium up in Milwaukee. So I think that's probably why they also pulled Uke in, because he was already there. Like you didn't have to go anywhere to find your play-by-play guy, because Uke lives in Milwaukee. He was the play-by-play guy for Milwaukee. So that was probably an easy fix.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the actors during this time, they did have to attend a baseball camp because they wanted all the major guys to be able to do things. Apparently, Serrano could actually hit like that. Like he actually, I guess, had some baseball in his background, whatever. And then a couple of those shots were literally him hitting the ball out of the park. Like he literally was able to. He was well. Look at him. The guy's like 6 foot and a solid rock. Yeah, he's a big guy. So they actually filmed a couple of those scenes. He actually hits the ball out of the park. And again, Charlie Sheen had played baseball when he was younger, and actually, I think was scouted by a minor league team. Tom Berenger had played in high school. Corbin Burnson had some baseball in his background. So a lot of these guys already knew how to play the game. one of my favorite other facts that I think, again, we talked earlier about good old Wesley Snipes as being one of his early roles. He actually turned down a role in Do the Right Thing, a small role, and Do the Right Thing to do Major League because it was more of a co-starring role.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when it came time for the sequel, by that time Wesley had blown up. As Anthony mentioned, what were the movies he had done before? Everybody knows New Jack City.
New Jack City was the one that put him on the map. But
Yeah.
I mean, by that time he'd done New Jack City, Jungle Fever, Passenger 57, Rising Sun, Demolition Man,
and Mo Better Blues with Spike Lee also. Yeah.
Yeah. When was Major League 2? When was that?
94. 94, so yeah.
The Demolition Man. And then I mean, God, and this is before he got the Blade.
Right before he got the
This is before he did Blade.
And before the IRS got him for the tax evasion.
Who?
Sorry, Wesley. I didn't mean that, bro. I was just kidding. Don't come get me. I was only playing. I was only joking. But no, yes, so that was way before all of that. So
wow.
Sorry, I know. My bad, Wesley. Sorry, man. Sorry,
yeah, Iris came and got him. Who?
Iris. Yeah, Iris got him. But yeah, so I mean, by the time the sequel came around, he's like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I need to do that, and he didn't. And he was replaced in the sequel by Omar Epps, of all people. So there you go.
Who went on to have somewhat of a
nice little career there for him. Well, that late 90s, early 2000s for Omar was pretty good with Juice. You had Juice.
He was on House.
Love It Basketball.
Yeah.
Love It Basketball was a big one.
I think he got a primary. He was one of the primaries in House in the later years.
Oh yeah, okay, right, correct. Yeah, so let's say he had a nice career for himself, Omar Epps.
My God, Omar Epps is 50 years old. Also, well, yeah, I guess
he's our age. He's all right.
He was a young man. He was a young man putting his acting down in his 20s in the 90s. Yeah. And just quick research: Bob Uecker, as of 2022, still broadcasting.
Right. See, that's what I'm saying. Bob Uecker was the man. And the thing is, people don't realize it. Well, people don't realize he actually. It's funny because the Mr. Baseball joke. Bob wasn't that good of a hitter. He was a catcher, but he hit like 200. Like he wasn't that great of a hitter. Pretty decent catcher, so he kept him around. But people are like, "Oh, Bob, Hall of Fame career." Well, a Hall of Fame career as a broadcaster, not so much as a player for Mr. Uecker. But sometimes those guys make the best announcers because they know the game. You know what I'm saying? So it worked out good for Bob.
Hey, he's actually played for the Braves.
Yes, he did. Correct. But that was probably the Milwaukee Braves, wasn't it?
It was the Milwaukee Braves, and then they moved to Atlanta.
Right.
So he started.
And Milwaukee got the Brewers.
I mean, he played for the Braves his entire career, but he started in Milwaukee and ended in Atlanta.
Yeah, there you go. So there you go. That's what I said. And Uecker was like a career 200 hitter, and it's but funny stuff. Like a great baseball mind, great baseball guy. In the movie also are the groundskeepers, because if you notice during this film, there's the two Asian gentlemen who always talk about how bad the team is, and they just show scenes of them every now and again of talking about how bad they are, and then they start winning, and they got that. That was played by a father and son team. Kurt and Keith Uchima were the two guys, and then I believe they reprised their roles for Major League 2. They had them back, so that the two Asian grounds crew gentlemen were actually a father and son team. And here's one other fascinating one that I found, Andy. Handy. I just called you Andy, didn't I? I didn't mean to do that. Handy. There's an H in front of it. F. Gary Gray, who a lot of you may know, started out directing videos and then moved into movies. He was an extra. But he was an extra in this movie.
F. Gary Gray, was he hip hop videos? Yeah,
he did videos in the 90s, like he did, but actually was an extra in this film, which I thought was pretty. I don't know if you could see him or where you would see F. Gary Gray, but apparently he was an extra in this movie. But yes, obviously we know he went on to direct feature films, but he got his start doing videos in the mid 90s. Like F. Gary Gray was on every big music video I think back then. So yeah, that was pretty good there. Anything else handy you got for that? Do you have anything else?
No, that's it. I think we pretty much tightened everything, gotten everything jam up and jelly tight here.
No, for sure. But yeah, I mean, again, this is one of those things where, like, as far as baseball movies go, you can't go wrong with Major League. I think in terms of where it fits. Some people always argue because, like Anthony said, in the '80s you had like The Natural, you had Field of Dreams, right? Like what was that 90? I don't remember if it was 89 or 90, but you had Major League, you
Well,
had
they kind of the 80s and the 90s kind of let's be real.
Yeah.
The 80s and the 90s kind of ran together. They were two very awesome
Oh,
eras.
sure,
But
absolutely for movies, yeah,
I mean,
especially.
where movies were concerned, and there
Yeah,
was a little bit of bleed over
yeah,
between. There was a little bit of bleed over between the culture of the 80s into the early 90s, and it was only later on into the 90s that we started to see some, changes
yeah.
in fashion and music and things like that. But so I couldn't
Yeah.
tell you.
No, but Eight Men Out came out too, the 1988 film about the
Mhm.
Chicago Black Sox of 1919. That was another. I like it's another baseball film that I like. I'm a White Sox fan, but coincidentally, Charlie Sheen was in that one as well. Played outfielder Hep Felch of the 1919 White Sox. So Charlie Sheen doing a couple baseball movies in
He
his
did
early career.
a few movies.
Yeah, did a few, and but yeah, I mean that's pretty much Major League, the story of an underdog team that succeeds despite the owner not wanting them to. Again, ripe with your favorite comedic lines. There's some good stuff in there. The cast all went on to do other things. Obviously, again, you look down the list and just go, "Oh, this guy did." Berenger, like I said, still worked. Like Berenger was even in Training Day. He had a small
He
part
was.
as one of the. He was one of the small guys or one of the small parts where Denzel's talking to like the politicians or whatever. You see Berenger sitting there at the table with him.
Oh yeah, wasn't he like
You
a
know,
city councilman or the mayor?
yeah,
Or
city
something?
councilman, something like exactly. So you had that. He continued working all the way. Burnson, you still see today in different things. Obviously, LA Law was his big thing, but Corbin worked throughout. He was on the West Wing a couple of times, like stuff like that. So
How
and we
about
all know what. Good,
well? How about this for 6 degrees of separation?
sure,
You got Tom Berenger in
yes,
Major League,
yes,
Major League to Training Day,
yes,
Training Day with Denzel Washington, right? But
yes.
that's not the connection. Who
Okay.
else is in Training Day in an unpaid role? Terry Crews.
Oh yeah,
Terry Crews Terry Crews to Cat Williams in Friday After Next.
right.
So
So there you go. We go from Tom Berenger to Cat Williams. See now, there you go. And only Anthony could have put that together because I wouldn't even thought of that. So there you go, my friends. This is what I'm saying.
The only reason that stuck out in my mind is because Terry Crews just did the
Shay Shay,
podcast,
right?
right?
He
And
did
he was
Shay Shay.
talking about how he had that unpaid role where he was he was in that scene, the epic Denzel Washington scene at the end of Training Day.
Oh yeah,
And he said I didn't get paid anything for that, but that unpaid role allowed me to get other roles, which later on allowed me to start getting paid.
yeah.
So
Because King Kong ain't getting. Well, we all know the speech at the end,
yep,
right?
we know.
we know that one. We know that one.
Suffice it to say that King Kong would not use Charmin tissue anywhere in the vicinity of Denzel Washington. Something like that. Isn't that what he said?
You crack me up. But yeah, so here we come, as Boys to Men would say, to the end of the road.
Yes, sir.
I can't let go, but we have to, I guess, because we're done talking about Major League. I think, right? Anything else you want to add, Andy?
Oh no, look, we're good. We are good. We appreciate you guys for taking the time to watch today's video. We will be back with another episode very soon. We do appreciate those of you that reached out and dude. I'm just gonna say this and put this out here because we didn't do this in the last episode. The folks that like this show were messaging us like, "Yo,
when's
episode
coming?
When y'all coming?" And then we taped last week. And then they were like, "We know you taped." They was like, "Yo, we know you taped last week." It's almost look. People were after us wanting to know when this episode was coming out. Like people that were asking Target employees if they got any more Stanley Cups coming. They were like, "Yo, I know you taped. You told me you taped. When y'all dropping the episode?" So for those of you watching, we go try. We made sure we put this one out a lot sooner than the last one, so you didn't have to wait as long for this one to come out. But we'll have some more coming for you soon, and we do appreciate your continued support and spreading the word about this show.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you guys so much. Well, I guess that's it, Mr. Handy, right?
Yeah, that is it. We do appreciate you all for tuning in. I know we swap off sometimes on closing it out. I'll go ahead and take the reins today. On behalf of myself, Mr. Anthony Handy, and my partner in crime here, the effervescent and ever-present Nick Rosario, we are here with stop it, Popcorn and Parachute. We will see you guys again soon with another episode. You all take care. See you later.
Bye.